This segment is all about the business of podcasting and digital marketing. Welcome to the program. I'm Mark Imperial, and the segment's brought to you by booksgrowbusiness.com. It's the place where busy professionals publish to educate consumers, grow their businesses, and to leave a legacy. Joining me on this segment is digital marketing consultant and podcast producer, Tara Jabbari. Tara, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Mark, for having me.
Tara, tell us a little bit about your work and who are the types of folks that you help?
So I work in digital media. My background is media production, but my passion, other than the writing and the editing and the directing and stuff, but my biggest concentrations was the producing and then the marketing. So I work with a lot of NGOs, nonprofits, businesses, and individuals like influencers or small businesses that are interested in podcasting. Either they have their podcasts and they need to find guests, or don't have a podcast and are interested in it, so they want to go on as guests because they have something to offer. So I find them and connect them, and then I help with them promoting it upon the release.
For your clients, these podcasters, what inspired them to start a podcast? Like, how did they feel it was going to help their business? And what are the challenges that they face that you help them with?
So I think I'll start with, a lot of people are starting to see this platform growing and growing, podcasting. And always the number one question I get is, should I start a podcast myself? And I think if the biggest thing is the consistency. So I make sure that they understand, whether it's a weekly, a monthly, or just a seasonally podcast, it is that consistency that's more important, whether it's just your mom listening or a million people listening. So once we figure that out, and if they're not quite sure, I always recommend to go on as a guest to see it from that end. And if you really liked that process after doing it about 4 or 5 times, then times it by 10. And if you can handle that, that's when you should start your own podcast. And the big parts are scheduling and figuring out who is a good person to have on my podcast, or which podcast should I be on. That's where I help them figure that out and do the scheduling, so that when they show up, they have a great conversation. And afterwards, I help them also to promote, because it can be overwhelming. They're like, I need to get it on TikTok and I need to get it on Instagram. And should I use the same thing or should I not? I help them kind of take a breath and do it. And also, because social media is consistent, like it continues, I'd be like, remember, you can do this in 2 years and do like a throwback Thursday kind of thing. So keeping it all in check.
The platforms have been around for quite some time now, but like anything else in the world, it's just recently exploding due to the pandemic in part, and it's still kind of like a wild west. So, with that in mind, are there a lot of big myths or misconceptions around podcasting? What are some of the biggest myths that you hear or misconceptions?
Um, I think we met at the podcast movement conference, and one of the bigger things was about video podcasting. Is it really going to be a thing? Is it not? So one of the biggest misconceptions that even I fall into it is like, why would I watch a podcast? It's for audio unit, like audio element. But it is showing more and more people are still, throughout the generations, particularly the Gen Zers and younger, are interested in the video as well. So be prepared to be on video as well as on just audio. Plus, the transcript is very important because they want to read it as well. And keep in mind, when they want to refer back to this, they'll be like, what was that Tara girl's name? Oh, it's Jabbari, because it's the transcript right there. So that's one of the big things, is that it's going to keep progressing. And then people are like, well, then that's just a television show, isn't it? And they're like, not quite. It's a new realm. So we're trying to figure things out. And the best way, if you can do it effectively and professionally, is to try it in each platform: audio, uh, visual, as well as written.
When people consider doing a podcast, what are some of the biggest, common mistakes or pitfalls you see people make when they first get started?
When they first get started, I think sort of make a mistake of like, it doesn't need to be a huge deal. I can just use my phone and we'll just talk and not really, they don't have a niche. They don't have a clear vision of what they're going to talk about. Um, so for instance, I've worked with a lot of ones that are in entertainment. So it would be like, okay, so there's the television, then there's the musicians, then there's the sports elements, then there's theater, live action, all sorts of stuff. Like, which one do you want to focus on? So if you're going to just focus on films or just television or just sports, because entertainment is so vast. So that when in season 20 and you're like, I'm running out of ideas, you don't necessarily feel too overwhelmed because you're like, well, wait, now we can go back to like the history of baseball when it first was televised. And also, like you can go back to your niche and help you kind of narrow it down. And that helps your audience know exactly what they're going to get into. Otherwise, the audience will be like, I don't know what they're going to talk about. One day it was about baseball. The next day it was about Taylor Swift. The next day it was about, politics, like Scandal, the TV show, like, and they're like, I don't know what I'm getting from them. So getting into that niche, whether it's a business podcast, a health podcast, entertainment, make sure you figure that one out and then try and go as professionally as you can of, having a microphone or being in a closed set, whether it's like a closet or something like that, just to keep the echoes down, if possible. But also don't be afraid to just hit record.
Sage advice. Tara, what inspired you to get into this field and how did you get started?
Well, my biggest passions were like filmmaking and documentaries and things. So I trained as a media production. So I learned how to edit and produce and write for documentaries, news segments, and films. And as I kept progressing, it was during a time when social media started picking up. So there was this new way of telling stories. Now, podcasting isn't really anything new. It's talk radio, right? And even the fictional podcast, it's called War of the Worlds by Orson Welles. Like, it's not new, but it became new. The idea that you can stream it and listen to it whenever you can, that's what made it new and different. So as I started progressing into all the different realms that digital media can offer, I found podcasting was the most genuine and authentic way for listeners and audience members to connect and to learn from each other. So that's how I got more and more involved. It started with a podcaster who needed help finding guests. And so I would find them guests. And I really just enjoyed getting to know like, oh, this is a good fit. And oh, it's not as great of a fit, but actually you might be good for this partner and all sorts of stuff. And then it was just a relaxed, nice conversation and people get to know each other better than just on like a one interview based, like a documentary where it's just one person speaking kind of, and the social media aspects, it's kind of limiting. Podcasting wasn't as limiting.
Terrific. Is there anything in regards to podcasting and the business of podcasting that I didn't think to ask that you feel is important to share with the audience?
I think when people are interested in podcasting, but this is one thing that I'll notice. A lot of people are interested, but they're like, you know what? I don't like the sound of my own voice. To which I say, well, are you going to actually listen to your own podcast or like your own interview? No, it's for other people. And you have been speaking with me for this time. And I haven't run away because your voice is annoying me. So don't be too insecure about it. And a lot of other comments are like, "Oh, who am I to talk?" And all that stuff. Everyone has an opinion, everyone has a story to tell. And so when it comes from more of a humble but mutual respect, try it out and don't be afraid because you're really not alone out there. So look into it and don't be afraid.
For folks listening right now who are interested in a podcast or you've inspired them to maybe start one and could use your help, how could they find you, connect with you, and learn more?
Sure. So I am on all the different social media platforms at Tara_Jabbari. And my website is tarajabbari.wordpress.com. And there's like a contact form there. And yeah, like find me online and just like hit me up, DM me, let me know that you listened on Mark's podcast and want to learn more so I can kind of understand where you've learned about me. And then I'm happy to do a consultation and see what's what.
Tara, this has been terrific. I really appreciate you taking the time to share with my audience today, and I wish you continued success for you and for all of your clients.
Thank you very much, Mark, for your time and letting me come.
That was digital marketing consultant with a specialization in podcast production, Tara Jabbari. And this segment's been brought to you by booksgrowbusiness.com. It's the place where busy professionals publish to educate their consumers, grow their businesses, and to leave a legacy. That's all for now. I'm Mark Imperial, and thanks for joining me.